MrBeast is one of the most successful YouTubers in the world and is especially known for his incredibly good thumbnails. That's why I took a closer look and analyzed a bunch of his thumbnails and identified 5 strategies as to why MrBeast's thumbnails are so incredibly successful. In this video, I will show you how MrBeast designs his thumbnails and, above all, how you can apply these principles to your own videos. MrBeast's thumbnails tell a story. Now, if you're anything like I used to be, then your process for creating YouTube videos is probably the following. You have an idea for a video, you grab your camera, you film your video, you edit your video, you upload your video, and then you realize, whoops, I need a title and a thumbnail. So you think of a half-decent title, you fire up Photoshop, you put your face on the thumbnail because it's your video, so your face will definitely convince people to click on your video, and then you add text next to it about what your video is actually about so that people know the topic of your video. And then you upload everything and wait for the clicks because you made a good video after all. People will surely watch that. And that's already the first mistake, because you haven't understood how important the thumbnail of your video is and how important it is that you start telling the story of your video in the thumbnail already. Ideally, the combination of the title and the thumbnail of your video create anticipation and excitement in the viewer about what will actually happen in your video. Wow, MrBeast is trapped in a cave for 7 days and already looks so broken on the 6th day? Oh my god, is MrBeast going to explode in 2 seconds? Oh no, if he moves now, a laser will cut off his head. Shit, what happens if the train really falls into the pit? MrBeast's thumbnails always tell a story, and in most cases, a so dramatic story that you wonder how he ended up in that situation. And to answer this question, you only have one single option, which is to click on the video, and that is exactly what he wants you to do. But how he then actually starts his video is just as clever.
I just bought this train and it is currently barreling full speed towards that giant pit over there.
Did you see what he did there? The video is called Train vs. Giant Pit, and you can see a train driving towards a pit on the thumbnail. And what happens in the first 3 seconds of the video? Exactly what the title and the thumbnail promised. A train driving towards a pit, which we can visually see on one hand, but he also verbally confirms that he has bought a train and is sending it into the pit. Now, I can already hear you typing in the comments, but Marcus, the first few seconds of the video, I thought this was a video about thumbnails. Calm down, calm down. You're right, of course. But it's important that we understand that thumbnails and video belong together, especially the introduction of the video and the thumbnail. And you should start to tell the story of your video in the thumbnail, which then directly leads into the introduction and then continues in the rest of the video. So the perfect order for producing a video should actually be, you have an idea, you then think of a title and a thumbnail. Because if you can't think of anything good, no matter how good the rest of your video is, nobody will click on the video and nobody will see the video. And then if you find a good title and a thumbnail, then you think of the hook, so how you can pick up the title and the thumbnail in the very first seconds of the video, prove to the viewer that the click on the video was worth it, and at the same time create a suspenseful arc that marks the rest of the video. And only then you start producing the rest of the video. Now, I don't mean to say that the rest of the video is completely irrelevant. The rest should still be a banger video, but the introduction to the banger video is just as important. So I would suggest to understand the first 5 seconds of your video as a visual summary of the video, and then the first 30 seconds as a summary of the content on what your video will be about. Now, if we take a look at this very video of mine that you're watching right now, it's a video about MrBeast's thumbnail. So I show exactly that visually in the very first few seconds. And in the first 30 seconds of the video, I also summarize the content verbally again. MrBeast makes good thumbnails. I had a look at them and analyzed them, and I will show you why they are so incredibly good. K.I.S.S. Now, I'm not talking about the band, of course, but K.I.S.S. is an abbreviation for Keep It Super Simple. Because one mistake that many YouTubers make is packing their thumbnails with tons of different things. Because you are led to think that the more things you put on your thumbnail, the more interesting things you can sprinkle in there, and the higher the chances that a viewer will find something interesting on your thumbnail and then click on it. But the problem is, nobody looks at thumbnails for hours. Well, apart from me when researching a video about MrBeast, of course. No, your thumbnail is typically shown alongside loads of others. And the viewers scan within seconds which of the many videos they're actually clicking on. No one will look at your thumbnail in detail. So your thumbnail must therefore simultaneously first attract the attention of the viewer to actually look at your thumbnail, and then be understandable what it is about within fractions of a second. Let's quickly test this. I will show you a thumbnail of a MrBeast video for half a second, and then you're supposed to tell me what the video is about. Did you get it? Now, if your guess was MrBeast spent 7 days on a raft in the sea, then you're completely right. And you understood that in fractions of a second. And your thumbnail should be just as simple as this. Now, a rule of thumb for this is the so-called 3-object rule, which means you should try to have a maximum of 3 main points of view on your thumbnail. Less is, of course, possible. In principle, I would say less is even better. Now, what do I mean by 3 main focus points? Let's have a look again at some of MrBeast's thumbnails. Here, for example, we have 3 distinct elements. MrBeast holding a torch, a cave in the background, and a text element showing that this is day 6. Here again, we have MrBeast in the foreground pointing to a train and a pit in the background. 3 elements. This one actually only has 2 elements, MrBeast in the foreground and a luxury yacht in the background. Once again, only 2 elements, MrBeast and some lasers that look like they are trying to kill him. By the way, if you want to know how to animate this cool social media banner yourself, or you're simply interested in learning Adobe After Effects, I've published a new course on my Skillshare where I show you exactly that. And if you're too lazy to animate yourself, the completely finished animation is also available on my Patreon. Let's get to one of the most important points of a successful thumbnail: colors and contrast. Some of the biggest YouTubers in the world deliberately use very bright colors in their thumbnails. Because, of course, one of the easiest ways to stand out from the crowd is to draw attention with colors. Because before you can arouse the viewer's interest with the content of your thumbnail must first draw the attention, so that the viewers actually even start to look at your thumbnail. I'll show you once again what I mean. If I were to show you all of these thumbnails here, which one would you look at first? That's a pretty tough question. All look pretty uniform. But if we now mix in a thumbnail with bright colors, which one would draw your attention first now? Well, probably the one with the bright colors. So the fact that MrBeast puts someone in a red circle on a green field in this thumbnail is certainly not a coincidence. Because MrBeast deliberately works with very colorful thumbnails, and above all with a lot of complementary colors, which means that the colors are directly opposite each other on the color wheel and therefore have a very high color contrast. Here we have bright red jackets in front of bright blue jackets. Once again, bright red jackets in front of bright blue jackets. Or here, for example, an orange vest in front of blue fountains, a blue sky and sea with a yellow luxury yacht, a bright red winter jacket in front of the blue Antarctica. Fun fact, that is exactly also the reason why my logo looks the way it does. It's a white bird on a blue circle with an orange frame, with orange and blue being complementary colors. But regarding this, it is super important to analyze your competition carefully, because if all of the thumbnails look like this, then suddenly this one stands out of the crowd. So the rule is, look at what everyone else in your niche is doing and try to stand out. And also, don't overdo it completely. If your thumbnail no longer looks realistic at all, then it's more of a turnoff to the viewer. Now, another thing that I did in the past for, admittedly, a much too long time, I tried to always use text on my thumbnails. Because I have to explain the content of the video with text in my thumbnail, right? MrBeast, on the other hand, in many cases doesn't have text on his thumbnails at all. And if there is text, then only text that supports the story of the thumbnail. For example, to convey which day of a challenge the thumbnail shows, or to clarify a before and a after. Or here, for example, directly built into the image to show this baby is only 1 year old. So you really don't have to use text on your thumbnails. As I've already said, I have been committed to the idea of having text on every thumbnail for way too long. Because text takes up a lot of space that could be used in much better ways. A picture is worth 1,000 words is a stupid cliche, but it's true. So if you can get the same information across visually without text, then do it visually. By the way, the exact same thing applies for your video itself. Show, don't tell. But if you want to use text on your thumbnails, here are a few basic rules. First, it is best to use only 3, but no more than a maximum of 4 to 5 words. Because, as I've already said, your viewers will only see your thumbnail among many others and for fractions of a second. So it would be optimal to actually test this with some friends of yours or your family or something. Is 1 second enough to completely read and understand the text on your thumbnail? Second, your text should be easy to read. So use a bold font and a text color with a high contrast to the background. I would also recommend to use a font without serifs. Now, what the hell are serifs? Now, these are fonts with serifs. They were designed for print to be easy to read as long texts in books, for example. These are fonts without serifs, so these small thingies. They were designed to be easier to read on screens. So unless you're planning to print your thumbnail in a newspaper, use a font without serifs. Now, you might think, if the thumbnail is so incredibly important for the video, why don't we just use clickbait with the title and the thumbnail? Just put some tits on the thumbnail and everyone will surely click on it. Now, it's not quite that simple, because clickbait actually damages your channel. In fact, YouTube will only suggest your video to people if the people who previously clicked on your video actually watched it. So how do we get people to actually watch our video? The most important thing here is good storytelling. And the YouTuber with the best storytelling in the whole world is definitely K.I.S.S. I took a closer look at how he actually does this and identified 3 of his principles, which I'll introduce to you in this video.